Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing today?
Doing great, Eric. How about you?
Doing fantastic.
Got the air conditioner on, looking to get hot outside. It's great.
Yeah, we're looking at a heat wave, 4 more days over 90 degrees here in New England. Doesn't happen much in New England, but when it does, it gets brutal.
Yep. But it's still, in my terms, I like BS when it means beats snow.
Oh, yes. Yes, I would much rather 4 days of 90 plus degrees than 4 days of a blizzard.
Absolutely.
Because no matter what else happens, I don't have to shovel heat.
No, you just leak that stuff. I'm just kidding.
Right. So today, we're going to be talking about something, I think it's a very appropriate topic for the dog days of summer. Just how you can stay productive and simple tips to help your productivity. It's no secret that productivity dips in August. A lot of people go on vacation. Even those people who are in the office, they're dragging because of the heat. People aren't as productive now as they are the rest of the year. So we're going to talk about different tips and different tricks to keep your productivity high. And hopefully, if you work at one of these companies, that if you get enough done, you actually get a summer hours and say half a Friday off or a Friday off, you get to take advantage of that.
Yeah, there's obviously a whole lot of ways, and to get prepared for this, I mean, you can go online and Google articles about this and lists and so on and so forth. And there's so many good things out there. But you and I were talking about this before. A lot of people always talk about your to-do lists and all this other kind of stuff and whatever. And I think what I'd like to start out with is something that caught me by surprise, but it makes a whole lot of sense. And it says, write a stop doing list. And this is proven successful by a small little outfit named Apple.
Yep, it's a fantastic little trick. I don't know if it was developed at Apple, but that's where I first heard about it. And it really is a great idea because we all do things during the day that are just a waste of time. Things we, don't like doing, they're not productive. They don't help us finish our work. They don't help us get to our overall goals. So put a list together, and when you come across something like this, write it down. And as a reminder to stop doing it.
Yeah, Steve Jobs said that was what made Apple Apple, was not so much what they chose to build, but all the projects they chose to ignore. So obviously, when you're brainstorming, you're looking at possible things to do, you're writing down a whole lot of different things. But if you can qualify them yes and no, and remember the no's, that's your stop doing list. Remember those no's. You're going to save yourself a whole lot of time, which will increase your productivity just by saving the time. If it's a bad idea today, it's probably going to be a bad idea tomorrow. So it's really interesting that I just read the point and then I said, Steve Jobs is in this? Wow, I got to read this.
Yeah, he was very big on focusing on certain things. When Steve Jobs came back to Apple had something like 18 different products they were working on, different models of computers, different types of computers. And one of the first things he did was he put a grid on a board with just 4 squares. And in the top row, he wrote business. On the edge of the top row, he put business. On the bottom row, he put personal. And then on the first column, he put desktop. On the second column, he put laptop. And he said, the only way we're doing a product is if it fits in one of these 4 squares. and we're only doing one product per square. So he cut down from 18 products to 4 to refocus Apple. And it really is a great idea to see. Take a look at everything you're doing and figure out what you can stop working on.
Yeah, and along those lines, we've talked about this before, but there are two things that come to mind. Number one is the multitasking. That's definitely a no-no as far as if you want to be productive. And one of the best ways to do that is to chunk down your projects. If you have a big project that's out there, that's something you're going to procrastinate on. If you're going to build the next great iPod or something like that. However, if you break your large products into smaller goals or manageable chunks, just one at a time, and you have a whole bunch of little things that as you click them off are going to lead you to big successes, that's a great way to do things. Because if you have a big thing in front of you, not only is it going to take you longer to do, but if you're multitasking, it's never going to get done. And the anxiety just looking at it that you have to do that is going to take up time also. So if you focus on small things at a time and one thing at a time, it's really, really a great tool for productivity.
Absolutely. It is so much easier to complete a big project when you've broken it down into small items, because the small items aren't as intimidating. So you figure out how to break it down. Einstein used to use a saying. He said, you want to make it as simple as possible, but no simpler. And what he meant by that was you wanted to break down a task into as simple steps as were possible, but making sure that nothing was left out.
Yeah, and by having smaller things there, it's a lot easier to not omit things because it's smaller things to begin with. And if something comes up there, you can just write that down and make it another chunk.
Right. When you have something broken down, it gives you the advantage of seeing everything step by step. It's a lot easier for you to see, oh, wait a minute, we missed such and such. I very often use creating a website as an example of this. If you have on your to-do list, create a website. If you're just doing pieces of over and over, you can forget certain things. But when you break it down, determine what pages you're going to have. Write text for each page. Create images for each page. Do SEO for each page. And you break it down step by step. When you have everything written out, you can look at it and go, oh, I forgot XYZ. Whereas when you're looking at the project as a whole, that's not as obvious.
Yeah, so planning up front and writing out whatever you want to call it, but a project sheet or task list or whatever that just logically breaks things out, and with time goals. I mean, this is really getting into the SMART goals thing. If you can take every project that you have and break it into smaller goals and time those things out and put them down. I like to use a spreadsheet, or you can use other things. You can get software for project management things there too. But if you take the time to list everything out at once, so that you do have this big goal up there as far as what you're trying to accomplish, but all the chunks are there in front of you, it's a whole lot easier for you to attack things. It's a whole lot less stressful because you know how you're going to get things done. So it's very, very important to plan things up front in written fashion. I mean, writing things down is one of the key things that has always worked forever and ever before computers and everything else. But if you have it in front of you in writing, it's a whole lot easier than remembering it.
Yes, it's very important to write it down, either with pen and paper, on a spreadsheet, on a project management program, however it is that you work best. Make sure you have things written down. And we've been talking primarily about lists because they're a fantastic productivity tool. We talked about a stop list. We've talked about a project list. I want to mention another kind of list. people don't seem to use this as often anymore as they used to, but it's really a powerful tool, and it's a call list. And this is simply a list of people that you need to touch base with on a regular basis. And sometimes it's because you need an update on a specific project. Sometimes it's just a matter of staying in touch to keep your network fresh. But having a list of people that you go through that list, when you get to the bottom of the list, you start again at the top. Send them an email to see what's going on. Give them a phone call. Go out to coffee.
Yeah, and if you have that list available to you at all times, one of the best tips that you can use, people who try to be everything for everybody are wasting a whole lot of time. And one of the best things you can possibly do is take that list and look at the different talents out there and outsource everything that you can't be the BIW, the best in the world at. When you're actually writing up your project and how you're going to be doing things, it's a great idea to plug in those people that you're talking about right up front so that you can contact them. And this way you're contacting them with a reason too, staying in touch and so on and so forth. And it's a great way to build a strategic team to get things done, because the more you try and do yourself, it's a big time management lesson and productivity lesson. Everybody says that use everybody's strengths, play to everybody's strengths, and sub out things that you're weak at. And there's plenty of people to do that. And by building up your team, through networking and other things, building up your resources and staying in touch and actually integrating those into every single project plan that you write up, it's going to help you out a whole lot.
Absolutely. Delegating and outsourcing are fantastic productivity tools. None of us, no matter how much we'd like to be, are the best at everything. So if it's not something that's in your core competency, if it's not something that you're the best at, bring somebody in who it is. And again, I use as a frequent example of this, doing your books. Most of us are not accountants. We're not financial people. If you're doing your own books, it can be taking you 3-4 times as long as it would somebody whose business this is. And if you're paying a bookkeeper, say $30-40 an hour, and it takes them an hour to do your books, what's the value of your time? Are you billing your time? Even if you're only billing your time out at $25 an hour, if it's taking you 3 or 4 hours to do this, you've saved your time, you've saved money by delegating and outsourcing.
And you probably have a more accurate set of books too.
Right.
These people, like, accountants, HR specialists, there's all kinds of headaches that you don't need in business that you can just delegate out. Payroll, that all have their rules and regs that are changing all the time. And just by locking in that expense and forgetting about it and knowing that it's going to get done is so much more important for your own peace of mind, number one, because you do have to be in compliance with everything. But number two, to just know if that's going to be done. And the bottom line is, even if you do the books properly, the CPA or the accountant that you get doing your bookkeeping for you is going to know how to do things better, what has to be done. They're going to know the software better because they're using it all the time. And it's just such a great thing to do. Again, that gets back to, outsourcing everything that you're not the best in the world at.
Right. So another big thing about staying productive is finding time and allowing yourself not to be productive. If you are on the go 100% of the time, you will burn out. You can't be at the top of your game all the time. So part of staying productive is allowing yourself downtime to not be productive, to regroup, and to sort of reset your brain so that when you get back to work, you're really on the ball. Now, this can be making sure you've cleared your weekend so you're not worried about work all weekend. It could be as simple as taking an hour off for lunch and just shutting your brain down from work for that 1 hour. Go out, go to a restaurant, go to a coffee shop, grab some food, and just decompress for that hour. Then when you get back to work, you're refreshed and you're productive again.
Yeah, and this is something that you can work into a routine. Some people work better if they work in chunks of time, then take a little bit of a break and so on and so forth. But you should find something, and when you do find yourself burning out, they say a quick power nap for 10, 15 minutes is going to make you a whole lot more productive for a long period of time. And it also actually, while you're doing that, if you have something that's bothering your mind, it gives you time to focus on things, and you might actually come up with solutions while supposedly you're taking a nap or something like that. And so it's really, really important. And I know that you use this in what you have as far as your Business system, also tracking what's your most productive time of day. It's not the same for everybody. I mean, a lot of people say you got to get a lot of sleep and get up early, but some people work better when they're working late at night. Again, it's your own routine. And if you can develop that and track when you're most productive, how long you can work before you start getting a little bit tired and so on and so forth, you can actually program yourself to work when you need to work and be more productive that way.
Right. Understanding how you work best is so important, because when you're high energy, that's when you want your tough tasks. That's when you're at your most productive. You want to get stuff done. Forcing yourself to get a lot done when you're at a low point, it's counterproductive. Not only don't you get a lot of work done, but the work you do get done tends to be of a lower quality. So you need to figure out how you work best and allow yourself those times to not be productive.
Yeah, and another thing that you need to do is keep your work area clean. There's a saying out there that says mess creates stress. And quotes it here said, this was learned from tennis icon Andre Agassi, who said he wouldn't let anyone touch his tennis bag because if it got disorganized, he'd get distracted. The bottom line is you got to clean the clutter out of your office. And if you come up with a management system, even if it's a filing thing where you're putting things that you may get to in one place in a tray or whatever, and if it's still there a week from now, you're going to throw it out. Get yourself into an organization system, because if you walk into the clean workplace every day and take a look at your desk, it's going to pump you up a whole lot more than, oh my God, I'm looking at this and how am I going to get started? It's going to take me 10 minutes to find the thing I need to work on type thing. So you got to make sure that you keep decluttering a big, big part of what you do.
Right now, I'm going to actually put a little caveat onto this, because what's cluttered for one person is not necessarily cluttered for another. So you have to figure out also what works for you. Some people are very comfortable having piles upon piles on their desk. The real test of whether it's a system or whether it's clutter is if somebody walks over to you and says, I need XYZ. If you can put your hands on that in under a minute, that's a system. You have everything organized. It may not look like it to the outside viewer, but to you, that's a system, and that's fine. But you need to make sure that whenever you need something, you know where it is and can get to it quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the most important thing. If you organize things in proper ways, and some people's businesses are different than others where you got to have these things and other people don't. I mean, if you're doing consulting work and project work, you're going to have a whole bunch of files by clients and so on and so forth in a place. But if you can put your finger on it, just as you're talking about, it could be a filing cabinet, or it could be a little hanging folder thing on your desk like you're talking about, and you're able to get to it quickly. It's your own system, and the bottom line is you're going to be a whole lot less stressed out if you can find everything, because you know darn well, and we've all gone through this, where when we are in a disorganized state, we need to get something done quick, and we have no idea where to start because we can't even find what we're supposed to be working on.
Exactly. And there have been times where my mind is, cluttered and I'm completely unproductive and I can't seem to get moving, very often what I do is clean my office. Because by starting to put everything where it's supposed to be and putting things in some sort of organization, it sort of rubs off. So as the office becomes more organized, so does my mind. And by the time I'm done with this, I'm a lot more relaxed and more productive.
Another thing too, obviously we've been talking a lot about systems and so on and so forth, but one system is your body. And it's so important to keep that in top shape too. So it's things like drinking a lot of water, exercising when you can exercise, setting aside time to do that, setting aside time, as you said before, just to get out of the office, go take a walk and so on and so forth. It's so important to work on that side of you because we are not machines. We can't just keep plugging stuff in and plug ourselves in like putting gas in a car and expecting it to run all day. It's just not going to work out. So you definitely have to work on yourself too and work that into your daily routine. Stay in top condition.
And just going for a walk is so important. We were talking about Steve Jobs earlier. Well, one of the things he was famous for was walking meetings. And whenever he would meet with someone, he didn't meet with them over a conference table or at a desk. He always took them out and went for a walk with them. And he found not only did he get more done, but because he was engaged in a physical activity of walking, he felt better. He was able to think more. And it also gave the meeting a different structure. So there was a lot less pressure, a lot less stress involved. So think about that. The next time you've got a meeting with someone, go for a walk.
Yeah, it's great. And if you're driving to that meeting, another really important tip is to use your commute time wisely. And we've talked a lot about the importance of continuing education for yourself so you can stay the best at your profession. But listening to audible.com, audio tapes and things like that are really important. There's a saying that says the fastest way to double your income is to triple your rate of learning. And while you're normally driving, if you're normally just listening to the radio or whatever and so on and so forth, if you make your car a classroom, that helps out a whole lot. And, I'm kind of like exhibit A as far as how I got to be where I am as far as my focus on the personal development side of what I'm doing. I've done most of that work by listening to things in cars and then buying the book to highlight the different things that I want to focus on. But it's so important to budget your time wisely when you can't be at your desk. And a lot of times that means when you're commuting. And a lot of folks, if you're, living down in the city and so on and so forth, you're commuting on subways and so on and so forth. Just have your iPod with a little audible thing going on that's going to teach you something rather than a video game.
Absolutely. It is so important to keep up with what's going on, learn new things. But it's also important that you can do these things in what could otherwise be useless time. If you're sitting on a train, well, it's very easy to listen to an Audible program while you're on the train, while you're in your car. If you're commuting by bus or train, remember that call list I mentioned earlier. It's the perfect time to shoot off an email. Hey, hi, how are you doing? To keep in touch with folks. So being able to have these little tasks that can improve you and increase your productivity, and you can do them in these periods of time where it's essentially useless time, doubles your productivity because you're doing things to make yourself more productive and you're doing them in time you would have wasted, which increases your productivity again.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who really have not done this in the past, it's actually a lot of fun listening to the narrators or the people who wrote the books or the materials themselves on there. while you're driving. And what I always do is my method is to listen to something first, and then if I like it, I'll go out and buy the book, because the book will have all the little points and so on and so forth that are in there. But it's a lot of fun to listen to these books. Where if you think it's going to be boring to make your car a classroom, think again.
Yeah, there are so many great audio books, podcasts, TED Talks, so many things you can listen to while you're commuting, while you're doing something else. It's a great way to keep improving yourself. Now, we're coming up on the end of our time, but I want to get one thing in that's really important, and it's when to stop working. We have in our country a massive problem of insomnia and of people not getting enough sleep. And part of that is because people work right up until the point where they're ready to go to sleep, and then they expect to be able to just stop and go to sleep. And of course, that doesn't work. You need to create a process before you go to sleep that separates your work, your activities from going to sleep, and give yourself that buffer, because without enough sleep, you're never going to be productive the next day.
Yeah, it's very important to make that a relaxing routine, because if you are thinking about a zillion different things before you're going to bed, even if you haven't worked before you go to bed, you're going to have a restless night. So if you can get into a routine where, you're counting all the great things that have happened during the day, looking forward to maybe this or that for tomorrow, and kind of drifting off that way, it's so important.
Right. And it's also important that you not stress about what's going to happen. There is a very common ailment called Sunday night insomnia, and it's caused by people stressing about the work week that's about to begin. It's very common, and it causes hours upon hours of lost productivity, because you're not getting a good night's sleep Sunday night, so you're not starting out Monday well. So by having that process of yours that keeps you from doing that and focuses you on rest and relaxation, you avoid that problem, get a good night's sleep, and head into the week productive. All right, so as we're winding up, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway from this week?
Well, we covered a lot of possible things that you can do, and the biggest takeaway is to really just analyze yourself and your work, how you're doing things, and actually come up with a written personal productivity system for you, things that are going to work for you to help you work better and feel better. They're all right there. But if you can put it down on paper and start working on your own system, I think that's a great thing to do.
Certainly. I think the big takeaway is that to be your most productive, you have to get things out of your mind. And that means putting them in lists on paper or a spreadsheet, taking the time to not be productive, putting that barrier in between work and sleep so that you're actually relaxing. But when you keep everything in your mind, one, you're not going to remember everything. Two, you're putting yourself under a constant level of stress, neither one of which is good for productivity. So whether it's using lists, finding relaxation techniques, whatever the productivity tip is, you need to get things out of your head. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at blogtalkradio.com/Success Showcase. You can also find us on the iTunes Store, the Apple Podcasts app, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.